Today we're going to go over some insights on what separates B students from A students. If you take a look at this graph, you'll notice that the effort required to go from a C to a B is not proportional to the effort required to go from a B to an A. It takes more effort to go from a B to an A than it does to go from a C to a B. Now, the reason that this is not the same in terms of effort level is because in order to get from a C to a B, you need to understand the contents deficiently. Requires understanding. You can understand what the professor is saying, you can understand the concept, you can follow along, you can make sense of things, but to get from a B to an A, you need execution. Now, execution boils down to two things: repetition, how long you've sat with the material and seen it again and again and done it again and again, and simulation. You're simulating real testing conditions in terms of intensity, in terms of pacing, in terms of accuracy, in terms of timing. All of these things are replicated in terms of your study habits. Now, so if we take a look at this, the analogy that I always give to students to try to kind of understand this concept is getting from a C or a D to a B is like being able to read music. You can read the notes on a page. But being able to get from a B to an A is as if you can play the violin. Playing the violin requires a lot more practice, requires a lot more making mistakes. It requires a lot of repetition, and you'll actually have to sit and put physical effort almost into it, just as if you would put pen to paper in organic chemistry, right? So reading the music and playing the violin are two completely separate things, and that's what separates B students from A students, is being able to get to that level of execution. Now, more practically speaking, what separates B students from A students is that B students have typically gone through all of the material and the practice problems once. A students have gotten through it 3 to 4 times. Now, you're probably thinking, how on earth am I supposed to, in one semester, get through the content 3 or 4 times? The way to do that is through something called triaging. You simply don't have time to get through all of the material in a slow, idealized way where you sit down with every idea and digest it as quickly or as long as you'd like. What you have to do instead is start with kind of a fast approach of getting through the problems and recognizing which problems are difficult, challenging, or somewhat difficult that you need to sit with, and which problems you could easily do if asked again. So I'm talking about problems like, okay, defining terms. What is this? What is that? A lot of these problems you can kind of figure out on the spot. They're very straightforward. They're easy for you to understand. Those are not the problems that we want to put as much time in as other more challenging problems. So what you do then, after you've gone through everything, you make an effort to understand the most challenging problems, and then you repeat that cycle. Now, you'll now find after you've sat with the problems and understood them that maybe there are 50 that you find difficult and that 30 of them you've understood and gotten down. Again, now you repeat it, and now you get to 30 problems with 20 that you've mastered, right? And so before an exam, what you're going to do is you're going to focus on these last 50 problems. You simply don't have time to redo all 100 problems before an exam. You have a very focused, methodical intensity about which problems you take on, and you do these last 50. Now, the great thing about these last 50 problems, for instance, is that they're typically level 5 problems. And the reason that's great, even though it's uncomfortable to be able to do, is because level 5 problems often contain all the levels beneath it. So by focusing on these most challenging problems to the exclusion of all others, what happens is you're already also doing a review of these other problem types, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to focus the semester on execution. We're going to focus on triaging, and we're going to focus on repeating the problems as many times as possible. And then lastly, simulating most difficult circumstance. So that way, on test day, we've already seen the most challenging problems and we are comfortable with that level of intensity.